Sit by and listen, children, for an old man Arch moment, okay? When I was but a wee boy, I expected video gaming to keep evolving, well, pretty much endlessly, as I grew up during a period of ceaseless, revolutionary video game activity, where we went from simple pixels and 2D to full 3D, where strategy games went from the likes of the first StarCraft, for example, or Warcraft, all the way up to Company of Heroes. The entire industry seemed to reinvent itself every couple of years. You had games like Doom come out and set the mold for FPS. Then games like Hitman come in and shatter it completely. You had games like Sacrifice that, well, redeveloped and redefined the entire genre. You had, well, entirety of Shiny coming up with new crazy bullshit every 5 seconds. And now, well, video game developers today are looking at Baldur's Gate's success and going, this is a bit unfair, isn't it? A quality video game? I'll be expected to be compared to a good video game. It is also only going to encourage those on the interwebs who are using Baldur's Gate 3's success as a stick to beat other developers with. Yes, good. It should be used as the bluntest of objects to beat the rest of the lazy arsewips in the industry with repeatedly, until either they go, okay, fine, we'll do something as well, or they just get out of the way and leave. This is genuinely one of the biggest issues in the entertainment industry today, not just gaming, but movies and television shows, etc. Complacency and laziness. People have long since given up on trying to do anything interesting, or even, as Baldur's Gate does, simply just take what already works, polish it, iterate upon it, and then release it. Like, Baldur's Gate doesn't do anything particularly special at all. Like, you can play the original Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and you will see many of the same exact, paces and styles, etc. It's not that Baldur's Gate 3 is revolutionary, it simply looks at what it needs to be, a good role-playing game with engaging characters and quests, and go, alright, we're gonna have to put some serious work into this and make a good, engaging role-playing game experience. We're not even asking for you to revolutionize gaming here. We're not asking you to reinvent the wheel. We are simply asking you to maintain a certain standard. And okay, to be fair here, there are some arguments to be made on both sides. So, the new game is the center of a raging discussion about what we should expect from today's AAA games, aka the big shinies. Some point of its lack to microtransaction or DRM, whilst others highlight its relative technical sturdiness and overall quality. Few people can go into specifics. I've read a couple of thoughtful comments comparing the bespoke, one-and-done nature of Baldur's Gate 3 quests with open-world action titles and other genres that hinge on repeated quest formulas and reward systems. All good points. No DLC on launch in today's world? Oh, that's unusual, isn't it? No microtransactions? Oh, well, what is the world coming to? What, you mean it's actually playable as well when it comes out of early access? Hell, it was playable in early access. It didn't require a day one patch for basic stability? Oh, what is the world coming to? Seriously. All digital video gaming has made developers very, very lazy when these are the things that are considered to be like, big boy good things. Oh, you didn't nickel and dime us and your game actually runs? Wow! You didn't repeat the same quest constantly? Holy shit. Still, it's all very apples to oranges, and developers are pushing back. They've been pushing back since well before launch, actually a few weeks before release in July. Strange Scaffold founder and Gosh former RPS contributor, Javier Nelson Jr. threaded about playing using their excitement for Baldur's Gate 3 to apply criticism or raise standards to RPGs going forward. Hey, this is a good game. You shouldn't expect more of this. Well, thank you for informing us, I suppose. Rather than drawing hasty comparisons, he wrote, it is important to consider Baldur's Gate 3's accomplishment with and against the specific of its development and production circumstances. Basically, he goes, Larian has made several good games and they've benefited from it and they've continued to make good games. That's damnably unfair. The rest of us have continued to make mediocre shit and for some reason, we're not in the same position. I know, odd, right? Okay. I have some problems with Larian. The idea of releasing Baldur's Gate into early access at full price, for example, I think is a downright predatory move, because they knew that they had the brand and the name recognition to get away with both asking for $60 up front and expecting you to beta test their product for them. I think that defeats the entire point and purpose of early access, which is that the developer offered their product for a discounted price, and people offered to help them bug fix their game in return. Not doing that violates the entire code of early access, in my opinion, but hey. They have made several good, critically acclaimed games, and they have built up the studio over the course of those successes. This isn't something that they were just given to. They didn't just start out this way. They built this studio from the ground up, and so criticizing for them being able to deliver a better product is, well, frankly, rather insane. All of which reflects Nelson Jr.'s own broader desire for greater transparency and understanding between developers and present players. As he said when I interviewed him a little while back, change the conditions in which you make a thing and you change the thing you make. That common sense for any other medium, but in games I don't see the truth acknowledged quite often. Bullshit it is. People will fall over themselves to hype up games that have been made by individual developers or people with limited resources. Manor Lords, for example, became an internet sensation when it became known that this very ambitious and at that point game we knew nothing about was being made by one rando in his basement. It was considered an incredible feat that he'd even been able to make something that resembled a tech demo. We didn't even know if the game would run yet, and it kind of didn't when it arrived at demo, crashing very often without even a save game system, but even so it was an achievement. Hell, I'm a guy who play games like Dominions made by like 3 fins in a hole in the ground somewhere. We absolutely do appreciate this, but sometimes when we're, and here's the thing too, when we are talking about this, we are talking about AAA game studios. We are talking about studios of comparable size and in many cases experience to a Larian. It's very apples to oranges indeed, but the apples are coming from this side right here. Nelson Jr.'s sources have struck a chord with the game development community, struck a jealous one, with other developers elaborating on the point and bringing their own perspectives. For National Insecurity's lead designer Gary J. King's Baldur's Gate 3 is an anomaly in an industry that is increasingly unable to take risks. Yeah, no, that's kind of your problem, though. That's on my concern. And when I reward a game that does take risks, and even that Baldur's Gate doesn't take a whole lot of risks, frankly, well, you should probably follow suit because that appears to be where the money is going. If you want to get money and take less risks, well, follow Larian's leads instead of going, well, this is unusual. Constrained as it is by greater scopes and budgets and ballooning dev times that could sink studios unless their games are a meteoric success. As far as King is concerned, the industry conditions that birthed Larian and let them hone their craft over several games before they made Baldur's Gate 3 no longer exists. That's why it's unreasonable to expect this to become the new standards. Bullshit again. Larian Studios started a long time ago, and the indie craze is still going on today. You still have, as mentioned, individual developers. You still have people being more than willing to throw thousands of dollars at Kickstarter projects so long as they think they're interesting. There are projects that have raised literally hundreds of thousands simply on the promise of what they can deliver. If anything, people are more chomping at the bits now, not even for something revolutionary, just for something good than ever. You are living in the best possible moment to take advantage of this rather than cry foul at it. Night in the Woods developer Scott Benson was more whimsical in his assessments. Just left the game dev coffee shop and we're all really mad and upset and afraid because of Baldur's Gate 3's scope and quality. Everything is threatened because someone finally made a giant, very expensive, well-received RPG with voice acting. No, we all have to do that, very upset. So he's taking the piss here, to be fair. And okay, this is where they do have a point. All of the voice acting in Baldur's Gate 3 was undoubtedly ludicrously expensive, required a lot of time and a hilarious amount of planning, coordination, writing, etc. But is that not the new standard? And cannot that be made the new standard? With AI voices getting better and better, and with games having in fact AI voices as their mainstay, and it sounds derpy, true, but people would excuse this if it was a good enough game. If people are willing to accept clunky ass written dialogue that they have to read out, I'm pretty sure they would expect to be able to handle lesser qualities as well. Though, to be fair, this is where one of the serious points lie. If the quality standards is raised to the point where everyone expects voice acting and expects it to be good, then it is likely that people will raise an eyebrow or two at the lack of it. As I mentioned in the previous video, if you hear an FPS game today without voice acting, you're going to be a little bit like, what is even this? And that will raise development costs even more. But we are already living in a time where development costs should theoretically be revolutionary low. There are more people working in this industry than ever. There are more pre-made assets in the industry than ever. There are more ready-made engines that you can simply just lease out and buy off the shelf than ever. You don't have to make your own engine. You don't have to make the game from scratch. You don't have to make all the assets from scratch. You could theoretically create an entire video game with the Unreal Tournament base engine and asset packs. The reason why the costs are ballooning is because you keep hiring on more useless shits, that you don't have an organized idea of what you're making, that you lack the passion to bring it to fruition using reliable and reasonable resources. Not to be a gigantic fence-sitter, but I think there's a grain of fairness to some other players' objections above, specifically those that contend monetization tactics and game systems that are shaped by them. While I understand that development studios of all sizes are under much pressure to break even, I find it draining that so many big-budget games are set up like storefronts, always trying to sell me something and so sabotaging their own enchantment as experiences or places. Absolutely. And again, it's not like the gaming industry isn't profitable. 98% of the ballooning costs can be traced right back to the companies themselves. Look at Creative Assembly, okay? Creative Assembly started making what was at the time a relatively niche game with Shogun 1. A mix of grand strategy and real-time strategy with fun little pixelated units. Great. It ballooned into a massive success where right now they are nickel and diming their customers to the point of ridiculousness, where they are putting out new $20 DLC every few months, whilst they are working on another few games that will be stripped to the bones on launch only to be fleshed out over the course of years with aggressive monetization strategies. Why do they have to do this? It's because they've employed 800 people to do this. That's why. If you continuously keep adding on the costs, you will eventually continue to need more money. If game companies would simply just make quality products within the limitations of their studio, you'd probably still have a lot more good games. Because again, Baldur's Gate is not particularly revolutionary in any particular aspect. It does things that games that are much older than it, decades older, has done before in most cases. Voice acting aside perhaps, etc. But even then you can go back to some old ones and you've got quite a lot of voice acting there as well, but details. But this entire pushback against apparent just quality, it tells you what you need to know about the current day gaming industry. Because this isn't about taking risks. This is about living in a realistic world with realistic expectations of your creativity, where people expect to get good games and the gaming industry is somehow in opposition to this. And they can make up all of the excuses they want, and indeed they are, but at the end of the day, in a competitive market where you are asking for $60, some are saying soon $70 for your video game, yes, you are going to have to compete. You are not entitled to anyone's money just because you made a video game. You have to actually compete for the player's attention. And now that the ESG scores are on the out and out, there's actually going to come a time yet again where a gaming company, a television show company, or a movie company's primary way of earning money is by, gasp, selling a product, rather than tickling investors' pickles. And I can't wait, frankly. Baldur's Gate 3. A rip-roaring success, and may it shake the RPG world to its absolute core. Till next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.